Listen to part of a lecture in a world history class.
In any introductory course, I think it's always a good idea to step back and ask ourselves, what are we studying in this class, and why are we studying it? So, for example, when you looked at the title of this course in the catalog, Introduction to World History, what did you think you were getting into? What made you sign up for it? Besides filling the social science requirement. Anyone?
Well, just the history of everything, like starting at the beginning with, I guess, the Greeks and Romans, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, that kind of stuff. Like what we did in high school.
Okay, now what you're describing is one approach to world history. In fact, there are several approaches, basic models or conceptual frameworks of what we study when we do history. And what you studied in high school, what I call the Western Heritage Model, this used to be the most common approach in U.S. high schools and colleges. In fact, it's the model I learned with when I was growing up back, about 100 years ago. At Middletown High School up in Maine. I guess it made sense to my teachers back then, since, the history of Western Europe was the cultural heritage of everyone in my class. And this remained the dominant approach in most U.S. schools till, maybe 30, 40 years ago. But it doesn't take more than a quick look around campus, even just this classroom today, to see that the student body in the U.S. is much more diverse than my little class in Middletown High. And this Western Heritage Model was eventually replaced by, or sometimes combined with, one or more of the newer approaches. And I want to take a minute to describe these to you today, so you can see where this course fits in. Okay, so up until the mid-20th century, the basic purpose of most world history courses was to learn about a set of values, institutions, ideas, which were considered the heritage of the people of Europe. Things like democracy, legal systems, types of social organization, artistic achievements. Now, as I said, this model gives us a rather limited view of history. So in the 1960s and 70s, it was combined with or replaced by what I call the different cultures model. The 60s were a period in which people were demanding more relevance in the curriculum, and there was criticism of the European focus that you were likely to find in all the academic disciplines. For the most part, the different cultures model didn't challenge the basic assumptions of the Western Heritage Model. What it did was insist on representing other civilizations and cultural categories in addition to those of Western Europe. In other words, the heritage of all people, not just what goes back to the Greeks and Romans, but also the origins of African, Asian, Native American civilizations. Though more inclusive, it's still basically a heritage model, which brings us to a third approach, what I call the patterns of change model. Like the different cultures model, this model presents a wide cultural perspective. But with this model, we're no longer limited by notions of fixed cultural or geographical boundaries. So then, studying world history is not so much a question of how a particular nation or ethnic group developed, but rather it's a look at common themes, conflicts, trends that cut across modern-day borders of nations or ethnic groups. In my opinion, this is the best way of studying history, to better understand current-day trends and conflicts. For example, let's take the study of the Islamic world. Well, when I first learned about Islamic civilization, it was from the perspective of Europeans. Now, with the patterns of change model, we're looking at the past through a wider lens. So we would be more interested, say, in how interactions with Islamic civilization, the religion, art, literature, affected cultures in Africa, India, Spain, and so on. Or let's take another example. Instead of looking at each cultural group as having a separate, linear development from some ancient origin, in this course, we'll be looking for the common themes that go beyond cultural or regional distinctions. So instead of studying a particular succession of British kings or a dynasty of Chinese emperors, in this course we'll be looking at the broader concepts of monarchy, imperialism, and political transformation.